Hey Jeremiah, so we are going to be talking about our social studies together right now. We did not do a lot in social studies today. We really are just trying to make a connection between where you left off with your studying of social studies in fourth grade and trying to connect it to where we begin in fifth grade material. Okay. You do not have to write down anything in your yellow social studies journal, but if you would like to, you are more than welcome to take some notes. So this first slide is just for us to make some connections to where you left off in fourth grade. This is a kind of a display of everything you learned in fourth grade. So let's review that really fast. Where you started in fourth grade is you learned about the age of exploration, the Columbian Exchange, and how slavery was brought to North America. During that European colonization, this is where people like Christopher Columbus, who were explorers from Europe, came over to land that was not really explored. However, if you look right here, we can tell that Native Americans were already present in North American territory. So all of these European colonizers were coming over and they were claiming to have explored these lands and figure out that it was unexplored, but we know today that Native Americans were already present. During that time, this is where slavery was brought to North America during all of that European colonization time. If you follow the arrows, the next thing you learned about was the American Revolution. This is where people had already basically gotten settled in the North American territory, and we realized that these people that settled were from Great Britain. They were British people. And so British people came over, but they started to realize that they were wanting to kind of maintain some freedom over in the new territory, which we know today is the United States. And so the people, we call them the 13 colonies, the colonists were basically not wanting anything to do with Great Britain anymore. King George of Great Britain was basically holding them there and making them work, but also taxing them. And they did not like that. So we see that the American Revolution is where the colonies of the United States, the 13 colonies, were fighting for their freedom from Great Britain. That's the American Revolution. So that's where it established our Constitution, our democracy, which is our style of government, and our Bill of Rights. If you follow the arrow up, the next thing we talked about in fourth grade was westward expansion. This is where we purchased the Louisiana Purchase, where people were moving out west. We had already claimed that we were a nation. And so people were like, you know what? I want to move out and explore and see what the United States has to offer for me. This is kind of where people got in their mind the phrase you may or may not know, God, gold, and glory. This is where a lot of people started to think that their God-given right was to go out west and explore, and a lot of people went because they heard that there was gold over there. This also is kind of where the beginning of the antebellum period occurred. The antebellum period is really summarized in the period of having slavery. And so a lot of people, African Americans, were being traded through slavery during this time period and being dispersed all throughout the country. If you follow the arrow, that led us to the Civil War, where we had a debate over slavery with the North and the Southern hemispheres of the United States. We know that when we fought against each other, the North ended up winning, which is where they basically emancipated slavery. So we know now that this is that starting point of African Americans having their ultimate freedom in America. After that, we led straight to Reconstruction. Well, Reconstruction means to rebuild. And what really happened is during that Civil War, our entire nation basically was in shambles. Lots of land was destroyed because it was that internal conflict. This war, Civil War, happened on American territory. So it's not like any other war where it's been somewhere else. This happened on our turf. So our land was looking pretty rough. So the last thing fourth graders really talked about was Reconstruction, that rebuilding America moment where we're trying to reconnect the northern hemisphere of America in blue right here where my mouse is to the southern part again. we were trying to become one nation. This is also when the 13th and 14th and 15th Amendment were passed, 13th where it ended slavery. But we see that Jim Crow laws, which is some laws put in place for African Americans and how they could disperse in society and live. This is where we take off, okay, in fifth grade. So I hope that that kind of helps you see your time in fourth grade and what you learned and how we can kind of connect to this ending point of Reconstruction and how that picks us up where we left off. Okay. So we really are focusing in fifth grade at the starting point of building back America. And we built back America through two things roughly: expansion, through money, growing our economy. Our political field really started to also grow, and our social expansion. So many people started coming to America. This is where that word migration takes off. Many people were migrating to other places, whether that be for freedoms, religious freedoms, or just wanting to find a job to make money. So our country basically started going through what we call this industrialization period. That's that big word right there. This is where the period of social and economic change, it transformed our human group in America from being this agrarian society, which means farming, agriculture. We moved from that to this industrial society, which means we moved from farming to having machines, to having industry, to having big factories and big businesses. That was the switch that Reconstruction started to make for us. We started to see that our country was growing, and it was growing really fast. Okay. But we have to realize that America was built on farming. That's how we started, that agrarian society. Okay. So, the biggest thing that we talked about today is making sure we understand that we're picking back up right after America is trying to be rebuilt. And how we are rebuilding America after the Civil War is through expansion, growing our money, growing our politics, growing socially. People are wanting to come to America. And so when they come to America, they're wanting jobs. And the jobs we have to offer at this point is either you go down south and you do farm, or a lot of places up north started to build factories and machines and having a lot of industrial jobs. Okay. So we're going to see later tomorrow in our lesson that migration does start to pick up. People are wanting to come to America, and that's part of that rebuilding, reconstruction phase. So if you have any questions, please direct them to me by email or anything like that. I'm here to help you. Okay. Have a great afternoon.